After a week off for Independence Day, we are back and we've got 2 weeks worth of stuff to cover on this week's Smoke Filled Room. So it's going to be packed. We've got some experts with us, including two sitting legislators. So we're going to have a really great discussion this week. Let me introduce our guests here. We've got Steve McClure. He's the state senator from Illinois' 54th district and has served since 2018. Prior to that, was an assistant state's attorney. And Steve's been on the podcast a few times. Good to have you, Steve.
Good to be here.
We also have with us Andrew Chesney. He's a state senator from the 45th district since 2023. Prior to that, was a state representative and an alderman in the city of Freeport. And Andrew, you've also been on before, so glad to have you back again.
Good to be back. Appreciate it.
We also have Chris and Michael with us. Michael, who brings expertise and a lot of value to these podcasts, and then Chris, who just brings grumpiness, but for whatever reason, people still like him. Michael, Chris, how you guys doing?
Hey, all good. It's good balance between the two of us.
It's great. It's great to be back, Collin. As much as you like to give me crap, the check still clears at the end of the month, so I have nothing to complain about.
See, there you go. You earn it. All right, let's get right into it. I got to tell you, my team's been sort of waiting for this for 2 weeks, because 2 weeks ago, the last time we did one of these episodes, I said that I'd lose it if by the next time we have a podcast, which is today, we still didn't have any serious statewide candidates. And here we are recording this on Thursday, and we still don't have any serious statewide candidates. We've got one candidate for governor in Jim Mendrick, who is partially serious, but people have concerns about the campaign. Other than that, we got nothing. And we have 7 statewide offices available. Petitions start being passed in less than a month, significantly less than a month at this point. And we still have no statewide candidates. We have some that were flirting with it. Dan Ugasti was flirting with running for governor and announced this week that he would not. He'd run for re-election as state representative. I'll be honest, as much as I love Dan, he's been on a few of our podcasts. The whole process I didn't love. I mean, he was quoted as saying, I'm looking to see if there's going to be the support there, if the donors will get behind me. It's like, when does this mentality become our mentality that to get a candidate, we have to woo you? Like every other state we work in, they feel like they have to earn our support. They've got to earn the donor support, earn the elected support, go out there, prove you're electable, prove you're a good candidate. But in this state, it's like, oh, please wine and dine me, and then maybe I'll run. I don't know. Again, sorry, Dan, I don't mean to be too harsh there, but I'm sick of this. We need a candidate. I'm sick and tired of these people like, well, if somebody asks me nicely, I might run. It's governor of the state of Illinois. If you don't have the fire in your belly, then get the hell out of the way, because we need somebody to run. We've got Darren LaHood for the Senate race, who keeps saying maybe I'll do it. We all know he won't. He said by August, he'll announce whether or not he does it. Richard Porter is still considering. I mean, months later, we're still considering a bid. I'd love it if he did it, but come on, let's go. Petitions are in a few weeks. You've got Aaron Delmar making cryptic posts on social media that, I mean, he's my friend, and I don't even know what the hell he's talking about. I don't know what's going on here. I need to catch my breath. Anybody have any thoughts, either positive or negative? We need some candidates, guys.
Well, I think on the alternative side of the coin with the Democrats, obviously they've got their incumbents. They're all, running for re-election or running for other offices. But I'm hearing locally, in the Metro East area, that the Democrats are having a very hard time recruiting candidates for, state rep, state senate, etc.
Yeah, listen, just hold on. I don't want to cut you off. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
Right now, we're talking statewide candidates. So
Sure.
what are your thoughts on that?
I was just saying that there's a similar dynamic on both sides of the aisle where you have these top tier races and both sides are kind of struggling. I think part of that is because.
Where do you see that?
What do you mean? Where
on the higher level races for Democrats, they've got 15 candidates running for the ninth congressional.
I'm saying for like state rep, state senate, things like that.
We're not talking about that right now. Chris, come in here and bring some sanity for me.
Well, look, I believe 2 weeks ago I said that if there was no statewide candidates for the Republicans, you would owe me $5. You did not take me up on that bet, which is good for you because you would have lost. Because listen, like I said a couple weeks ago, the Illinois Republican Party is not in a position where a lot of high profile or even tier 2, tier 3 candidates are going to jump into a race which they know they don't really have the best chance of. Let's be honest with ourselves here. That's the case for governor. What continues to upset me is you have attorney general, state treasurer, comptroller, which might be open if Susana Mendoza decides to announce she's running for mayor in the near future. Why doesn't anybody take a look at those? And that's been frustrating to me because I think the Illinois Republican Party, frankly, has a much better chance if they were to say, we want to put all of our focus on, the state treasurers. Farrick's office isn't the best. He has problems within the party that might be needed to be ironed out. A decent Republican looking at that seat might be able to make waves. Tom Demmer didn't do that bad last time, and he was basically abandoned after Irvin lost the primary. So that's what frustrates me, especially on the comptroller side, because that might be an open seat, and I haven't heard a single human being say, like, I'm even thinking about it if Mendoza jumps out of the race. And some people have to be careful. Some people are state representatives, and they don't want to lose their seat if they make a statewide run, which makes sense. Some people are state senators who don't have the fortune of, being on a favorable cycle where they're kind of sitting pretty this year and can afford to. But at the same time, politics is about risks. It is. And if the Illinois Republican Party wants to move forward and actually be competitive in the state again, somebody has to say, like, I'm running for state treasurer and I'm going to put together a multi-million-dollar campaign, and win or lose, I'm going to build my name ID. I'm going to carry water for the elephant, and I'm actually going to give us a good showing. And it doesn't seem like anybody wants to do that. I don't necessarily blame them because of the state the party's in. At the same time, it's amazing that there's nobody, not even a tier 2, tier 3 people in person in a lot of these districts.
Colin, you're on mute.
I knew that as soon as I started chomping on the bar, I knew I'd make that mistake. I mean, Steve and Andrew, I don't want to put you guys in a bad spot here, so certainly feel free to pass the ball on this if you'd like. But I mean, I believe Illinois is worth fighting for, and I look at this field right now, and I wonder, am I wasting my time with this party in Illinois? And other states, even other states that are bluer than Illinois, you've got candidates who are like, yes, I'm ready, I'll fight. And in this state, what do we got? We got nothing.
Well, there are some unique things happening to our state that are not happening in other states. The first thing is that Pritzker's money is just so overwhelming that people don't want to jump into it. And the second thing, as Chris alluded to this, is as far as state senators, most of the state senators are up this cycle in our caucus. And so, you lose your seat potentially and then have a very difficult race statewide. And so it's not worth the risk for most people when they take everything into consideration. And the third thing that's really unique to Illinois right now, I think, is the unbelievable infighting among Republicans. The party is more fractured than I've ever seen it right now in the state. And I think you said we're going to get into some local races. So I'm getting involved with, obviously, we've got some Senate seats, one of which I'm going to be heavily involved in that campaign. And I'm just finding this fractured party where people just want to fight amongst themselves. And when that sort of thing happens, what happens is that people just try to protect themselves. They don't try to expand. They just want to, fight that fight internally and then move on with their lives. They don't want to, if they weren't worried about these internal fights, they could think about, well, let's do a general election. Now everybody's worried about primaries and we're just not in a good place. The Democrats are more united than I've ever seen them. They are united in their hatred for President Trump and everything Republican right now. It ties them together to the point where it's incredible. You're seeing them protesting at all kinds of things. We can't even have a protest when there are obvious things to protest because we're too busy pointing fingers at each other instead of trying to realize that it's the Democratic Party that's brought our state down. It's not Republicans. And so that's the problem right now. It's just this internal fighting. Pritzker's got so much money, and the cycle itself does not lend it to a lot of elected officials getting involved because it puts their seats at risk.
Yeah, and I would just say a few comments. First comment I would point out to is Donald Trump won all 7 swing states, first Republican president with popular vote in 20 years, and the mega Republican movement throughout this country is not alive and well in the state of Illinois, meaning that we don't even attempt to try to bring in Trump populism throughout the state. And so the reason, it worked in Wisconsin, it worked in Michigan, but for some reason we don't even attempt it at all in the state of Illinois. And so the Midwest, if you take a look at the Midwest where Trump did really well and they leaned into Trump populism, we refuse to do it. So you're not seeing candidates come through and embrace that, because I would say that many establishment Republicans don't believe it. And I'm not saying they don't do the ribbon cuttings and they don't give the appearance that they're on the Trump train, but they weren't. I mean, secretly they were most of them were hoping they would fail. So that's one of the issues you have. Steve's correct. You do see a fractured party, but you also saw a group of people try to put together a slate of candidates that were very, some of them were good, some were not so good, but they all lost. I mean, you saw $50 million go behind Richard Irvin, and got what, third or fourth place. And so when you are asking serious people to come forward and they see the mismanagement of campaign dollars, the financial support getting around candidates that are not getting through to the Republican base, people get very reluctant. Now, Richard Porter, I think, would be certainly a nice shot in the arm that the grassroots and the establishment could coalesce behind. And that would be certainly welcomed, I think, if Richard Porter would put his name forward. But, I don't think this surprises anybody. What did they spend in the primary? What, 50, 60, 70 million bucks? And the guy that spent the most money got third or fourth place. So there's a lot of trust issues. And then if you take a look at the statewide level, how many of them in the leadership will lean into Trump populism? I would argue zero. Zero. And so you're not going to get Trump candidates. Now you guys are going to say, well, Trump can't win the state. We don't even try. I mean, we don't even attempt to sell what Trump has been able to accomplish in Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania. We don't even attempt it. And I think it's reflective in our results.
Andrew, since I'm trying to be more positive in 2025, what I'll take from your comments, and maybe this is what you meant, was the Trump populism, like the actual policies, the supporting working families, which me and Chris have been screaming about for a couple of years in this podcast, that's what we're not pushing forward, which frankly, I would agree. Now, I think where we would disagree is running a sort of Trump aligned candidate. That's where the data would show it's kind of rough. But where I do agree with you is there have been some policies, and you see it in the big beautiful bill, which we'll talk about next. You see that there have been some policies that that Trump and national Republicans have pushed forward that we haven't really tried to push to build an agenda around working families in this state. And I think you're right. I mean, where's that agenda? What does it mean to be a Republican in Illinois? I've asked that question over and over. No one's ever been able to answer that question. No, even party leaders can't answer that question of what does it mean to be a Republican? What do we stand for? And so as a result, yeah, we don't win because we can't even describe who we are and what we stand for. How can you expect a swing voter or even a base voter to decide, hey, I'm excited to show up for these guys? So there definitely are serious problems, and I do think you've hit on some of them.
But Colin, the other thing that should be pointed out here, talking about messaging, it's tough as a party to message when you've got the Democrat governor. What he spent on Darren Bailey in the primary 4 years ago, over $30 million on Darren Bailey,
I think. Yeah.
to support him. And then you've got really major Democratic issues where they're really doing something horrible. And a lot of people on social media are not talking about that because they're too busy saying things about other Republicans. I mean, like, this is not a good winning strategy here. And I agree with both of you about messaging and getting the message out. It's pretty tough to get a message out when a lot of people on social media are just bashing other Republicans instead of saying, wait a second, look what Governor Pritzker just did last week or whatever. That's not the message. It's this Republican's worse than this Republican. And it just doesn't help the party. It doesn't help anything. And then when you got Governor Pritzker willing to wade in multiple Republican primaries, the governor's race and the attorney general's race, I think he spent, $1 million in the attorney general primary. And then he spent over $30 million in the governor's primary. I mean, this is just a recipe for our party to be very divided and fractured. And that's kind of what's happening right now.
I mean, listen, we do see way more of a fractured party in this state than I see almost anywhere else. There's a few other states that are this bad, but it's rare. So I don't disagree there. But I also I'd like to see some trying. On this podcast not that long ago when Pritzker was in DC, I gave credit to the Freedom Caucus for going out there, and I mean that was great. Get some press, go out there, be visible. But I very rarely see that kind of life out of our party. We've talked about it before. I talked about it on the radio this week. That I mean, Pritzker had his announcement. He posted his tour days in advance because he knew there was no risk of Republicans doing anything about it. Like, where were we at those stops with signs, with some of our elected leaders, some of our party leaders giving the other side of the argument? We let Pritzker own the media and just say whatever the hell he wants to say. And I think all five of us could agree Pritzker likes to say things that have very limited ties to reality, but he gets away with it because no one else is giving the other side of the argument. He just did that whole statewide tour, and other than Kathy Selby doing a couple Zooms, we had no pushback, absolutely no pushback, and maybe one press release I saw from one of the leaders or both of the leaders. That was it. I mean, we got to try. We got to get off our asses and go try. Like, we have all these problems. You're absolutely right, but at a certain point, you look at it and say, is anybody going to try to fix things? Is someone going to try to get on the ballot and run for office? I mean, Pritzker is vulnerable, absolutely vulnerable. Is someone going to hold him accountable? Maybe you don't believe you can win, but at limited damage the guy before he goes and runs for president and gets 2% of the vote and loses. Like, let's go. Let's get in the game.
Well, I think the reason you see a lot of people disarmed is because the Republicans have joined the Democrats in many of these initiatives, from the gas tax to the personal income tax to the Green New Deal. You can go on and talk about the times when Republicans joined the Democrats. So the reason you don't see us talking about
all
it,
4, 6, 8 years ago, though. I mean,
I understand, but it never stops, right? And so like the gas tax goes up every year, and we can't message it because we were part of it. Now, when I say we, certainly not me. And so it also kind of plays into that Trump dynamic, right? The reason you don't ever hear the word Donald Trump or even Trump populism is many in our leadership are in districts where they just want to survive. They're not looking at going on offense. They're in survival mode. And I think that's where the state party needs to sharpen their elbows and just get out in front of this stuff and start hammering the heck out of it. But you won't see it out of the caucuses, certainly not out of the Senate caucus. In my viewpoint, they're not going to go and troll the governor and go after Don Harmon for his illegal contributions and go after Senator Jones for his corruption charge, because they don't want general elections and they don't want Don Harmon to lean into their races. So because of that, they disarm. And that's why you don't see the sharp elbows. I mean, why have we have not uttered one word about we have a sitting senator that's got filed for our corruption charges. We have not even mentioned that Don Harmon has accepted illegal contributions that the State Board of Elections says was improper. We won't utter it because if you take a look at the districts and who's in leadership, it disarms them. And that's why you don't see it.
Well, look, I think we're mixing problems here. My problem is that we're not even seeing a grassroots Trump type candidate emerge here. Like, we had Darren Bailey in 2022, and everybody on this podcast, even Michael and Andrew Chesney, who represents way more conservative areas than perhaps I do, all had problems with his all had problems with the campaign. But Darren Bailey ran a campaign. He won the primary, got a lot of support behind him. Didn't run a good general election campaign, but he ran a campaign. He put his name out there and he did as best as he could. That's not even happening this time. Like, the closest thing we have to like that grassroots, Freedom Caucus type candidate is Will Howard. And I have my own problems with Blaine Will Howard, but if he ran for
rumors
governor,
are that he's leaning more against than for actually even running.
Okay, but still, like, if Blaine Will Howard jumped in a race for governor, put together a campaign team and raised like $100,000, I would say this is terrible. Like, what kind of campaign are you running? But at least it would be a campaign. It would be a candidate.
Something.
Right. And right now we're looking at this. We got Jim Mendrick, who has a running mate, and that's kind of it. Like, I have to check to see if he's filed a financial report yet. But, like, it's not like he has any money. So right now we're all looking at a campaign where we're going to have Jim Mendrick be the nominee for governor, and he's not going to have any money. And Pritzker is going to beat him by, like, I don't know, call it 12 points. And we're looking at it like, wow, Hendrick only lost by 12. And we're like, yeah, he didn't do anything, but like, that's what you're looking at, right? So it's one thing. Listen, I understand Senator Chesney's gripes with everything going on. candidates, Republican Party doesn't have balls, blah, blah, blah. I understand that. But that's a separate conversation.
But that's not.
Why the hell isn't anybody,
Because
why doesn't anybody want to take a chance? Even
it's because Chris, but it's because the Republican Party hasn't shown they don't have the balls. And so you're not going to get anybody that wants to throw their name in that hat because they don't see the gusto. If they saw the gusto, if they were inspired, even if they knew it was an uphill climb with a steep hill and a big heavy boulder, they would throw their name in the hat. But they don't see the fight. And that's why I brought up the fight in the Senate caucus, the House caucus, and Republican leadership. They don't expect us to win. They do expect us to try. And I would argue we don't even try.
So
Andrew,
the answer,
Andrew, why don't you run for governor?
I think I'm too conservative in the state today.
Okay,
I'm not willing to compromise my values.
Who would be your
today.
perfect candidate?
What's that?
Who would be your perfect governor candidate?
I think Richard Porter would be pretty good. I think you could look at somebody like that. I think Richard Porter would probably be the best candidate that could strike that balance.
Well, let's
somebody like that.
Let's assume he runs for U.S. Senate. So Richard Porter is out for governor. So who would you want to run for governor?
I don't have a name.
I think the big issue here, and Andrew, you're bringing up votes from 6 or 8 years ago, and it's all about Republicans being negative. We have to be together as a party, as a caucus. And I got to tell you, I am personally working on the Senate race in my area for the 48th district, and I've been working that for a while now. We're going to have a candidate announced very soon, and the fractured nature of the party is the most troubling thing that I'm dealing with right now. And we have to be together. It's fun to talk about bad votes that people have taken over the course of 6 or 8 years, or say Republicans are the same as Democrats. That's really great. That's really great for our base. That really gets out voters. And that's why we've got no good options in some of these races. And I think that's got to stop. I think there is no question we can have discussions about bad votes or who did that or who did this, but just generic statements that the caucuses doesn't want to win and do, that's ridiculous. And that's true, Andrew. And, you and I are friends. Our caucus is a very good caucus, a very strong caucus. But I'm sitting here trying to get a race for the 48th district, which is going to be one of the top races in the state. It's one of our best pickups. And instead of talking about how bad the Democrats are, you want to talk about votes from 6 or 8 years ago and things like that. I just think that that's not helpful. We're a great caucus. We have certainly disagreements among the caucus. We disagree, as you know, internally about things. But as a whole, we picked up a seat. Derek Harris got a incumbent Democrat out of office. Not this cycle, but the last cycle. This most recent cycle, it was a tough cycle for us, but we held our seats. This next cycle, I do believe we're going to pick up at least 1 or 2 seats. And that's what we've got to be focused on. I mean, this stupid delivery tax that they try to charge everybody in the state, $1.50 that the Senate passed, that was going to pay for the Chicago transit system. Are you kidding me? All the stuff that Pritzker's saying. I mean, I got 48 hours worth of phone calls after I showed up at a press conference in Springfield, just bashing me for trying to stick up for the fact that people that are here that commit crimes and they're not here legally should be taken out of our country. And so the Democrats are after us like nothing I've ever seen before in my short political career. And it's time for Republicans to start being united and stop making excuses and blaming everybody else, because there's a lot of people that have been taking bad votes here in every caucus, even the people that jump on the mountaintop and tell them that they're perfect. I can assure you, I see every bill that gets passed or doesn't get passed, and there are bad votes that everybody has taken. But let's agree that the Democrats are coming after us, and they are coming after us in a way that is ugly. It's nasty. They will use guerrilla tactics, and we need to stop picking fights with each other, and we need to start realizing that this state will be a better place if we get more Republicans in the Senate, in the House, have better statewide candidates. We're much, much better than the Democrats, and we've got to be united about that.
Well, that's
Yeah, but that was
on this
the
podcast we've
no.
talked a lot. I'm sorry, Andrew, just real quick. On this podcast, we've talked a lot about the craziness of how far left Democrats have gone in the state and the bills they've passed, the bills they've tried to pass. Just this last session was eye-opening. It was ridiculous. And then you see the tax increases they're trying to push forward, as you mentioned with the delivery tax, all the fund to bail out of the CTA. There's just so much on a weekly basis we cover in this podcast that's so awful by Pritzker and the Democrats. That's what's fueling my rage and my frustration, that they are this vulnerable, they are this bad. They're not winning because they're doing a great job governing. They're not winning because they're doing things that working families in the state actually agree with. They're winning because we don't stop them. We don't put up a fight. We don't put up candidates who can beat them. We don't go out there and do the hard work. We don't gut off our rear ends and actually give the fight. So I agree with both of you to in many regards. But at this point, I got to tell you, petitions start getting passed in a few weeks. I'm starting to lose heart. I'm just going to be real. I know my team's expecting some long rant. I don't even have the heart to do a rant. I don't have it in me. If this state, if the Republican Party in this state doesn't have enough fight to fight back, I'm just going to stop wasting my time. There's 49 other states. We see way more success in other states. At a certain point, you start to say, you know what? Is it just unfixable? Are we just going to constantly circle the drain, fight each other, not fight the other side, not put up a fight, not run candidates? At a certain point, you say, then why the hell am I wasting my time and my money? Because I ran the numbers. I've spent over $1 million of my own money just investing in causes and hiring people whose full-time jobs was to help rebuild the party. We've got nothing but crap back for it. At a certain point, I'll say, you know what? I'll spend that money on my wife and my little kid. We'll get out of this tiny house and go live a much better life. I mean, at a certain point, you just say, is this even freaking worth it?
Well, I think the conversation or the question that was posed to the group was, why are we not seeing people come forward for statewide office? Correct? And we kind of went and weaved through that process of, and I think we can, the frustration was, why were we not at the when Governor Pritzker announced his frustrations, why weren't we there protesting? Why weren't we in DC? Why weren't we here? And I was just making an observation as to why we weren't there. And so the reason, in my viewpoint, that you don't see a lot of people coming forward is because of that fractured nature and because of the tradition of the state of Illinois not running good races. And I think that's impacting candidate recruitment significantly. I mean, clearly you could have a Jesse Sullivan, a Gary Rabine. The problem is you take Gary Rabine, which was a decent candidate, not a great candidate, would be a decent governor, and he's now investing more in Florida. So they're moving, their minds are moving in different directions. And so I think the issue you have, and where Steve and I probably see things a little bit different, is, and I'll put it on the record, you're not going to pick up a Senate or a House seat this year. State House, not a chance. It's not going to happen in this cycle. Will not happen. You'll be lucky to have what you have this time in 2 years. It just won't happen. And I don't think it's because of the fractured nature. I think it's the way that we've just addressed the way that we're trying to win. And it's not going to be successful, in my viewpoint. And I think we can look at this in a couple of years and we'll see who's right. But I don't see any pickups in the next 2 years. I just don't see
Do you
it.
see no pickups in the state Senate?
No. No, because I think if you were to take on a Doris Turner, who's a political machine in Springfield, you would have had to have had a candidate 8 or 9, 10 months ago, and you're just too late, because what's going to happen is you're going to do a launch, even if they have established name ID. You just can't take that type of figure out in a year and a half. It's a 2, 3, 4 year process of just building that out. And we don't attack her, right? I mean, like, politically, of course, I'm speaking, but we don't like politically go after it and lean into it on every issue. We just don't touch it. And so if you take a look at what Doris Turner, she'll win by 5, 6, 7 points, because she beat Sandy Hamilton by 1.5. So she'll win by 5, 6, 7 points, somewhere in that range.
So since you've taken a close look at this district, what were the Trump numbers and what were the numbers for the 2 state rep seats in the last election?
Well, the Trump numbers were like, it was like a D+1, 1.5 for the Senate seat. And so Doris is an incumbent. You're going to see a 1, 1.5, 2% probably bump there. So I would argue we have a 3.5 point disadvantage. and we don't have the money to go on offense. And so if you take a look at what Senate leadership has with $2.5 million, you're going to see possibly the Curran, the DeWitt, the Hills, the Harris race. All that money's gone. I don't see where you have the money to go on offense.
So
So if you
I'm
add the
pulling it
two,
up just so we have it because Steve, you asked. So in this last election, Trump lost the district by 3.4, so pretty
Okay.
close.
Yeah.
It was close. And let's see, looking back at the last governor's race, we lost it by almost 7 points. We've got it rated as D1, but it's been playing
Yeah.
like
So D1, I was right. D1.
so
it played like
if you add up the people that voted for the Republican state representative candidate and Mike Coffey's district, and you add up the number of people that voted for the Republican candidate and the Sioux Shearer district, my understanding is that the Republicans got more votes than the Democrats overall, and that makes up the Senate district. And if you look at these votes that have been taken, I'm not going to go into the votes. There is some very bad things there, and the candidate who I believe is going to run is a unique candidate, and so um, I'm very well aware of this race, and it's very close to me right now. So we'll just have to see what happens.
well, listen, Senate District 48, if we're going to pick up any seats in Illinois in the state on the Senate level, 48, which is one you're talking about, is our best chance. Our next best chance is Mike Halpin, which we've talked about a few times, which we don't have time today, but we're going to have to talk about that race soon. So, I mean, there are two specific races that I know Republicans are looking at. Steve, I know you're pushing hard on 48. We certainly are going to be cheering for you. I do get Andrew's point that Republicans tend to be so late with recruitment that we start really far behind the eight ball. So we'll see. You've got us intrigued with your comments about a special candidate announcing soon. We'll certainly keep an eye out for that. I know, Michael, you wanted to talk about some of the local races. Could you be fast on this because we really need to move on? But I know you wanted to give some positivity. I got nothing to give, so why don't you go ahead and finish us up with local races? I mean, I know we've had some announcements at the local level. We've got Tina Durant in 61 is going to be running against Joyce Mason. Krista Lofgren's giving it a second try against Amy Murray-Briel in 76. A lot of people are hoping Liz Bishop also runs there. AJ Gupta is running against Janet Yang Rohr in Naperville in the 41st. Tough district, but glad to see we have a candidate. Senate District 23, Linda Polasek is announced against Susie Glowick Hilton. Laura Ellman has an opponent in Julie Berkowitz. We've got Eddie Perez running against Linda Holmes in 42. There's been some candidate announcements at the state level. I don't know that any of those are going to be tier one candidates just yet, but certainly we're seeing some movement, at least down ballot. So, Michael, give us a little positivity before we move on.
Yeah, sure. No, I was just going to say that, we've been working very hard in the Metro East between St. Clair and Madison County on candidate recruitment. I believe, in the coming weeks, we'll have some names that are announced as candidates for countywide, county board, state rep, state senate. We have two seats that we're focused on, Chris Bell, and this on the Senate side, Katie Stewart on the House side. I think we'll see names here very soon on both of those races. And I'm hearing that the Democrats are having a very hard time identifying candidates to run against Erica Harris and Kevin Schmidt, which will be two of the, marquee races in our region on the Democratic side, ones that they're trying to flip. So I think that just keep your eyes open.
Okay. All right, let's move on. We've spent a lot of time in this. I appreciate you guys going through it. I can't pretend to say that I feel any better about things, but whatever. We'll just move on. Let's talk about the big, beautiful bill that passed since the last time we've hosted a podcast here. And we're going to do this in two sections here. We're first just going to talk about high-level thoughts, give everybody a chance to discuss this and kind of talk through the politics, because this certainly is going to have an impact on Illinois. And as we know, based on Pritzker's constantly wanting to talk about D.C. issues, this is going to be an issue that all of us are going to have to answer for in this next election at the state level. So it's definitely something we need to talk about. And then we'll spend a little time dispelling some of the myths and rumors and, frankly, crazy exaggerations by Pritzker and his allies in the media about what they're saying is happening versus what's actually in the bill. But first, we'll just open it up for a bit of a discussion on the bill itself and what was passed and what your thoughts are. So free for all. Anyone who'd like to jump in, go for it.
Well, I think, you were hearing a lot of doubts, over the course of the last 6 months of whether or not they were actually going to be able to get this done. They had that self-imposed July 4th deadline. And as we got to the end, people were like, oh man, we don't know if they're going to be able to meet this deadline, but they were able to get it accomplished. I think there's a lot of great things in this bill that are good for families and working families, and I know we're going to probably go into some of those. But I was kind of making the rounds over 4th of July weekend, going to different parties, parades, things like that, just talking to people. And that was a big topic of discussion. And when I would tell them some of the items in the bill that I knew would impact them directly, there was a lot of excitement, especially about the child tax credit and the increase that we saw there. You've got the $1,000 that they're going to put in a tax deferred account for children that are born, between 2025, 2028. A lot of excitement about that. A lot of excitement about the being able to write off interest on car loans if you buy one that's made in the United States. People are excited about those things. So I think there's a lot of there's a lot of pieces to this bill that we as Republicans can point to and say, hey, look, you voted for us in 2024. This is what we've done for you. This is how it's going to benefit your family and your bottom line. And hopefully the voters reward us for that.
I think that's the big thing. We got to go. We've talked about it a lot. We got to go on offense here and message this, because even since the bill has been passed, I've seen a little bit from Republicans on pushing our side of this, but nowhere near enough. I mean, you're going to have, we need 100 times as much of an effort here to get the message to voters. Well, I want to see, where's the TV ads? Where's the blitz? Where's the social media ads? Where's the digital ads to let voters know? Because the media ain't going to do it for us. They're obviously working against us here. So where's that push, that message to Republicans, to, as you said, Michael, or to voters, as you said, to say, hey, listen, this is what actually got passed, because a lot of the things that were included poll extremely favorably, but voters have no idea because they're not being told. We got work to do.
Well, I think with the national dynamics, I know the NRCC, they're raising a lot of money. They're already spending in some of these districts that they believe are in play, whether it's a Republican incumbent that's vulnerable or a Democrat incumbent that's vulnerable. But obviously, those ad dollars are not going to be spent in our state, right? We don't have a race where the NRCC believes that there's a path to victory outside of maybe the 17th if they, ever decide that they want to do something there. That's yet to be seen. But I think there will be ads and people will be seeing things, just not, beneficial to us in this state, unfortunately.
Who else has thoughts?
So
Well, I just want to go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
No, I mean, clearly highlighting the positive aspects of the bill is a good thing. Leaning into it is probably another. I don't know that you're going to see a robust effort to lean into these by many legislators. I mean, we're certainly going to do our best, but I think it's a fair criticism and observation, because the Democrats are already spinning it, right? And I think that we have, for the first time, an alignment of issues where, when it comes to men out of women's sports, when it comes to illegal immigration, taxpayer-funded illegal immigration, when it comes to taxation, property taxes, you have a mayor that's got a 7% approval rating. You're starting to see things. You just saw what happened in New York City. The Democrat policies and those that they're electing to lead are widely unpopular when tested, right? And so the question is how do you package a big, beautiful bill and say, hey, it's really popular to suggest, if you're an able-bodied person and you have the ability to work and you want this service to work, like, that's a popular position. We believe in the rule of law and building border security. And so I think there's a lot there within the bill to sell, a lot. And it's just a question is, who's going to do it, and if there's going to be a coordinated effort, and that's to be seen. Little early yet because of when it passed, but to be seen. But it needs to happen.
Steve, go ahead.
I was going to let Chris go first.
Okay.
Look at you being. Look at that. You're so kind.
Thank you, Senator. So like anything that comes out of the Republican-controlled Congress, this is a mixed bag, because there are some things which I think are really good, some things I think are really bad. But my opinion on certain policies isn't necessarily the point of this conversation. The point of this conversation is about the perception of the American people and how it affects individual races and how it can affect the balance of the House and how it can affect candidates in the state and around the country. The fact of the matter is that there are the positive things in this bill, and I'm hearing talked about, are no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. I've been hearing stuff about the child tax. What would you refer to it?
Credit.
It's like Yeah, it's child tax credit, $1,000 for every child born between now and 2028. Positive things in this. But the thing that Republicans nationwide need to worry about is the health care element. And Collin and I have talked about this in the past regarding Medicaid cuts, and the idea that most of the people who are going to be taking off Medicaid are people who are choosing not to work, choosing not to look for a job at all. In fact, there's a joke about the guy living in his mom's basement, playing video games all day, and he doesn't get health care anymore. And listen, I think that's reasonable in theory. That you want people, you want to encourage people to have jobs, you want to encourage people to have work, you don't want people milking the system. At the same time, one of the problems I'm seeing is that the Democratic Party is using this against the Republican Party because Medicaid cuts aren't particularly popular. They just aren't. And I've seen a number of Republican congressmen and candidates talk about how it's a good thing that so many people are going to lose their health care coverage under the big, beautiful bill. And that's problematic because in 2018, one of the biggest issues for the Democratic Party that picked it up seats was the health care issue, that the Republican Party in their infinite wisdom decided it was a good idea to repeal Obamacare in 2017. They failed, and the Democratic Party rode those concerns into the midterm elections and did very, very well off the back of that. So just something to be considered is like, while the individual cuts to Medicaid and other government programs might be justified and might actually do the country some good in the short term or even the long term, one thing is you have to understand is how we're going to message that to the American people. Because generally speaking, the American people aren't like, they aren't in favor of cutting healthcare funding. They just aren't. They aren't in favor of people losing their healthcare.
Yeah.
They're not. And now
Chris,
we're talking about.
Let me give a couple numbers to back you up, because just so we give this information to our audience. So a number of polls have been done over the last few months, and we've got a polling company that does polling nationwide. A lot of the things that are in this big, beautiful bill, we have polled on for years. So I'm drawing on a lot of poll data to tell you this. Some of the things in here that are the most unpopular, Chris has already talked about it, that when the people learn that the number of uninsured would increase, that 10 or 11 million, depending on what you're looking at, would lose their health insurance, 74% view this unfavorably when they hear that. Said the worst one, though, is, and this is why you hear Pritzker push on this over and over, is the rural impact. Every time we poll it, we see this come back as one of the highest things, that people are nervous about the rural impact of some of these things. And 79% had an unfavorable view of the legislation when they learned it would decrease funding for local hospitals. Those numbers are different in some of these different polls. I'm just trying to consolidate for time, but those are our two biggest vulnerabilities here. We can talk about the details of what this means, and we will in a little bit. But just for those who are watching this, you got to know the biggest vulnerabilities here, as Chris is saying, is the people who will lose their health insurance, and the rural impact to hospitals. Those two things pull off the charts, and that is absolutely where we're the most vulnerable. So Chris, I wanted to back you up on that.
Well, I appreciate that, Collin. And it's that, and just from anecdotal conversations with other people my age, they talked high praise on things like the no tax on tips and whatnot. I'm telling you, the extension of the Trump tax cuts not getting a lot of play in my generation. It just isn't, because I think a lot of people my age recognize that we don't see the benefit of those taxes. Most of those taxes go to like the upper income earners, the people who make more money. So that's not playing well. I mean, you could say
we're going to talk about that, Chris, because that's not true. But
that's not what the stats bear out on the impact. after they were passed in 2017.
We'll get into that shortly. So, Chris, go to your next thing. Go ahead.
That was all it was. Is that there's a perception within the bill that there is, that from a class element, that it's benefiting the wealthy and hurting the poor.
That is the perception. And part of the problem there is, the media is absolutely pushing that. Obviously, Pritzker's pushing it hard, as are the Democrats. That's their big thing, that this is a giveaway to Trump's billionaire pals. That's their message. But the media is playing right into it. And we'll talk about it in a second, how it's an absolute, utter, and complete lie. That said, Chris is right. The perception is there because the media and the Democrats are getting to push that narrative, and we haven't pushed back hard enough. So you're not wrong that the perception is there, but in a minute we'll talk facts, and the facts don't back that up.
And that's it.
Steve, I know you've been trying to jump in. Go ahead.
Well, I was just, this is what happens after this bill is going to be very evident to everyone. So if the economy is doing fantastic and people are saving more money when they pay their taxes, and inflation continues to go down, I mean, it's either going to do that or it's not going to do it, and it's going to be evident. And I don't think the details of this particular bill are going to be all that relevant to people when they go to vote. They're going to say, well, how much money does bread cost right now? How much money am I making? How much money am I paying my income taxes? And how's the economy doing? And that's what's going to be the big factor here. Is it's going to be economic pocketbook issues when people vote. And no matter what the rhetoric is right now about this bill, what the economy looks like when people vote is going to be the deciding factor here.
Yeah, Steve, you're right to a degree. Here's my only concern: when the initial Trump tax cuts were passed, that was kind of the mentality of Republicans. We don't have to push this that hard because once they go to pay their tax bills, they're like, "Ooh, this is great," and then they'll give us credit when they vote. And then they didn't actually give us credit. And so I do think there's a part of this that you're correct on, Steve. That the truth's going to be in the pudding. Either this is going to work or it's not, and voters will see that. But there still needs to be an effort to connect the dots because the last time we tried that strategy with the initial Trump tax cuts, we didn't connect the dots, and that's a big mistake Republicans make all the time. As we don't connect the dots for voters, we think they're paying attention enough to connect the dots, and they just aren't. And so, while I do agree that a big part of the success or failure is going to be on does this work or not, we have to make sure we're out there connecting the dots for voters. Because yes, there could be a message here. Hey, is your life better in November of 26, November of 28? Is your life better or worse? Of course, that's a message. And that's, the Reagan strategy back against Carter. But we do need to connect the dots because if their lives are better, but they don't give Republicans credit for it, it ain't going to help us at the ballot box.
No, that's a valid point, and every bit of criticism needs to be countered with something else. I think sometimes Republicans will dismiss certain criticism and not even respond to it because it's ridiculous. But there's that voter or that person in the population of our state that will see something and believe it. And so we do have to counter that, absolutely. And, the media is just as fractured as everything else we've talked about today, but they still do get messaging out there, especially when you've got a lot of money behind it, which Pritzker puts a lot of money behind his messaging. And he's now trying to push negative aspects of this bill. And despite the fact that, my goodness, Governor Pritzker, take a look at any of your budgets and go through them. I mean, you want to talk about horrible bills. I mean, the things he's done and the things that he can walk around touting, despite the fact that he had nothing to do with some of these things, it's unbelievable. But that's what we've got to do better as a party, is attacking Democrats instead of other Republicans.
So let's do this. I want to go into sort of setting the record straight on what is and isn't in this bill. For our audience, this is a really important section. I need you to pay attention here because part of the whole goal of our podcast is to equip you with what you need to be able to fight back. We've been talking this whole episode about fight, fight, fight. Here, we're going to equip you over these coming minutes here in this segment. We're going to equip you with what you need in each section, each category of what this bill touched. Let's start with taxes. Our strongest ground here, the biggest benefit to taxpayers and to the public is going to be on taxes. So let's start there because that's where you should start. So what is Pritzker and the Democrats and the media and all their exaggeration? What are they saying? They're saying that all this is to pay for tax cuts for their wealthiest friends, for millionaires and billionaires, for high income individuals. Nikki Budzinski said that this is going to cost households making less than $23,000 a year about $1,600, while families making over $700,000 a year will see a $12,000 increase. And see, there's the key. What they do is they conflate percentages with dollars. If you give a 1% tax decrease to the rich, to the wealthy, and a 10% tax decrease to the lower income peoples, in a real dollar, a total dollar amount, of course, the wealthy tax cut is going to be higher. They're tricking you by using dollar amounts instead of using percentages. So you want to talk about percentages, which we'll give you here. So what did it actually do? What did the big beautiful bill on taxes actually do? First, it extended the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, or CEJA, tax cuts, because those were going to sunset at the end of this year. So what would have happened if this didn't pass? If the Democrats had their way and this didn't pass, what would have happened? Well, the standard deduction would have been cut nearly in half. That's a tax increase for millions of low to middle income Americans who use the standard deduction, cutting that in half. Rates would have gone up from 3 to 4%. If you make anywhere between 12 grand a year and 200 grand a year, you would have paid 3 to 4% more in your taxes. For the upper income, the people that are making over 650K, they would have seen a 2.6% increase. So less, because their tax cut was a lower percentage. The child credit would have been cut in half. It's currently 2,000. It would have cut it down to 1,000. The AMT, the alternative minimum tax, which a lot of suburban taxpayers really hated, that exemption would have been lowered and it wouldn't have been eliminated. The death tax exemption, the estate tax exemption would have gone back to what it was before, which was 5.5 million, or indexed by inflation, maybe like 7 million. So more people would have been paying the death tax. That's family farmers, that's manufacturers all paying that death tax, small business owners paying it. What else did it do? In addition to extending those tax cuts and making them permanent, here's what else it did. It boosted the standard deduction even further. $750 for single filers, $1,500 for couples. That, and tied it to inflation, but only for the two lowest tax brackets. So if you're making less than $50,000 a year, your standard deduction is going to go up every year. So Chris, there you go. There's something you need to know. Again, an aspect of this bill that was targeting lower income individuals and making sure they had more help. The standard deduction helps low to middle income individuals way more than upper income individuals who all itemize. The child tax credit was boosted another $200 and indexed to inflation. That helps working families. As Chris said, $1,000 savings account for kids born between 2024 and 2028. Again, helping working families. No tax on tips or overtime. Again, helping working families. And by the way, that phases out and incomes over 150,000. So it's targeting low to middle income individuals. An additional senior tax deduction of $6,000. Deduction for your auto loan interest. Again, helping lower income individuals. Expansion of the low income housing tax credit of 13 to 14%. We've heard over and over the last couple months about how important it is to have new affordable housing in Illinois. Well, there you go. The Republican bill helped make that happen. As a matter of fact, Darren LaHood said that this would help create 12,000 to 15,000 new housing units in Illinois in the next 2 years. That's a big deal and helps working families and low-income families. Couple quick things to finish this out. There were increases to deductions for daycare. There were increases to deductions for the enhanced child and dependent care tax credit, and for the employer-provided child care credit. And last thing for Illinois, the SALT cap was increased, which helps Illinois taxpayers. So many things in this bill that help taxpayers, and over again with each of these, they phase out at certain incomes. They get reduced at certain incomes. It's all targeting low to middle income individuals. So what should the GOP message be? And then I'll open it up if you guys have thoughts. Here's what you should say. Democrats in the media are lying. They're twisting numbers to fit their narrative, but the lies are, as you just saw, easily exposed by simply looking at the bill. Without this bill, taxes would have gone up significantly for working families. But by boosting the standard deduction and the child tax credit, or the child tax credit, lowering tax rates, eliminating tax on tips and overtime, and adding a new senior tax deduction, Republicans have delivered tax relief specifically for low and middle income taxpayers. Every Democrat voted against lowering taxes for working families. So on taxes, I know that's a lot. Anybody have thoughts on just the tax section of the bill and how much that's going to help working families? Or I just talked you all to sleep. Could be that.
No, I mean, there's things that you rattled off there that I wasn't even aware of. So that just shows you how important it is that we get that message out there to folks, you know?
I have spent probably 20 hours researching this week. So yeah, my poor family hasn't seen me, but I want to be ready for this podcast. There's so much in this bill that just is not being talked about. And that's why I want to get the facts out.
Well, I want to say something I haven't said as a guest. I'm going to agree with Chris. Chris is right. There is a perception issue, and when it comes to the tax cuts that were put in place with the big beautiful bill and the impact, there is a disconnect there. And so it is incumbent on every Republican to sell that to the groups, because it is, I think on paper, it's an easy argument. However, at the ballot box and in the communities and the coffee shops, there is a real disconnect, and that is not landing. And we would be making a big mistake if we don't always sell it and not make the assumption that just people get it. We have to lay it out there very simple and explain how this helped. And Chris is right, because as of today, there is still a significant disconnect on some substantial pieces of that bill that I don't think is resonating the way it should.
Yep. And the key thing is, in what Andrew said, is simple. Because with all due respect to Collin, that was like a 3-sentence explanation of why the Trump tax cuts were good. Whereas a Democrat,
yeah, but Chris, just hold on. Let me just I spent a lot of time on that, so don't mess with me right now. Like, I was giving all the details for our audience. That wasn't me talking to a voter. I'm equipping our audience, and then at the end, I gave you your short message. So just be careful here.
I just want to say
Oh,
that the Democratic answer is much shorter, and it's just the Trump tax cuts benefit the wealthy more than they benefit you, and that even if false, Colin, resonates with a lot more people than the simplest version of the Trump tax cuts explanation on the average person. That's all I'm
And we
saying.
got to get the message out. That's where I agree with
like
Andrew
I
for
think you
sure.
could argue, just say taxpayers win, freeloaders lose. Be that simple.
But then
All right,
people
let's.
think that am I a freeloader? Because I don't feel
I
like
mean,
I'm
Chris, you
benefiting.
are, but I don't know
Well,
if
of
the
course,
average taxpayer is.
Well, I mean, when it comes to the work requirements, etc., the
Which
able-bodied
we'll get
people.
into. Yeah, we'll get
Yeah.
into that. Let me go to the next one here. We'll keep moving along. So another place where this is hugely beneficial is amongst businesses and jobs, especially small businesses, manufacturers. You've got Lisa Hernandez, the state. Let's talk about how the Democrats are exaggerating and talking about how horrible this is. State Democratic Party chair. Here's what she's claiming: that this is going to drag Illinois' economy into the gutter. It's going to cost us almost $7 billion in GDP. She says it's going to kill 50,000 jobs. Our tax revenues are going to plummet by 640 million in Illinois. That this is the biggest job killing bill in the history of the country. That's what she says. You've got JB Pritzker, of course, who chimes in on that and says very similar things. Also saying this is going to increase our electrical bills. The Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition, of course, you can always count on them to, they claim they're all for jobs, even though they've killed more jobs than they've actually created. They say this is going to kill 56,000 jobs in Illinois. It's going to result in the loss of billions, 17 billion worth of infrastructure investments. These are the claims being made by the Democrats. So let me give you the facts. Number one, let's look at this. So the provisions in the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act that were going to sunset were that the corporate tax rate, which was 35%, were cut down to 21. That would have jumped back up to 35 for all businesses. The 20% deduction for small businesses, that would have been done away with. That's a tax increase on 26 million small businesses in this country. Other things that were done in this bill that helped businesses, the biggest one was allowing for expensing of research and development costs. Biden had cut that. This brings it back. That's huge. The TMA, the Technology Manufacturing Association, said this was the biggest thing in the whole bill to them because it was a crucial fix. It helps protect jobs and drive investment. They were huge about how important that was. There's new credits for factory construction, for semiconductor manufacturing, for opportunity zones, that's low-income areas, carbon sequestration. It makes permanent the employer paid family leave credit. That helps working families. It expands 529 plans to allow them to be used for elementary and secondary education and even credentialing, which is huge for the trades. It makes permanent the business deduction for student loan for businesses who help their employees on their student loans. Again, helping working families, helping young people, and it increases $57 billion in our infrastructure system and the safety net for farms. There's so much this does to help our manufacturers, our farmers. So, Chris, that was just to help our audience. Here's the message. Here's the GOP message on this. This bill is a huge win for small businesses, manufacturers, farmers, and workers in Illinois. Without it, every small business would have seen a massive tax increase of 20% to as much as 38%. Devastating family-run businesses, killing jobs, and destroying local economies. Republicans did even more to support small businesses and workers, from credits to support domestic manufacturing, to support paid family leave, education opportunities, student loan repayment. Democrats voted against all of these benefits for small businesses and workers. That's the message on jobs and on businesses. Any thoughts on all that I just went through?
Colin, your summaries are so perfect. How could I add to any of this stuff? You're doing a very good job, and it's easy, quick stuff that people can utilize, so it's helpful. I'm not sure what comment we can make other than there's lots of good things in the bill.
Yeah, and appreciate it. We'll probably find a way to post this so people can use it. Chris, you want to make me any more angry, or are you going to let this one slide?
I'll let this one slide.
All right. All right. I appreciate it. Let's go to the deficit. So suddenly Democrats care about the deficit, even though while Biden was in office, they didn't care. While he added 8.5 trillion to the deficit, they were silent. as was the media, by the way. But now that Republicans are in the White House, now suddenly the deficit is a big deal again. So that's another aspect of this bill. Let's talk about it. Nikki Budzinski, keep picking on her, but she had an easy press release to grab. So she claims that this law will add to the national deficit by more than $3 trillion. So let's look at the facts. If you take out the tax cuts and just focus on the rest of the aspects of this bill, it cuts the deficit by over $500 billion over the next 10 years. Now let's talk about the tax cuts. The cost for that has been estimated to be $3.3 trillion. $2.5 trillion of that is going to be paid for by revenues from the tariffs. It's not talked about. Everyone's like, bad, tariffs bad, which I understand people have different opinions about the tariffs, but part of it is to pay for this, to limit the amount that the deficit goes up. And Darren LaHood said this well when he was on WGLT. He said that the Congressional Budget Office, when they scored the bill and made that claim about the deficit going up, they estimated that our growth over the next 10 years would just be 1.8%. We've never had growth that low. It's always been between 2 and 3%. And so their claims that the deficit's going to go up that much are absolutely not true. Here's the deal, though. Neither party has done a good job on the deficit. So my advice to Republicans is this isn't good ground for you to stand on either way, because neither Republicans nor Democrats have done a good job on the deficit. So all I suggest is to be clear on this, that the bill does make reductions in federal spending, but clearly much more needs to be done. Both parties have to start taking this more seriously and then move on. We're in much stronger ground on the tax cuts, on supporting small businesses and manufacturing and farmers. Let's be real. Even the five of us could admit we need to do a better job on the deficit. So I wouldn't recommend spending a lot of time on this aspect of the bill.
Politically, I think you're 100% right, Colin. I mean, you're not going to win on the deficit issue. You're just not. And neither were you going to, like, when the Democrats were in power. You weren't going to win on the deficit issue. Because you're right, both parties are bad on this. The thing that concerns me still is you mentioned something about, like, reduction of, like, $500 billion in deficit, which is nice, but, like, we kind of got to get our act together here in terms of deficit spending. And I think the tariffs are a great way to do that. But I would like to see a United States of America where we're talking about not having deficit. Like I want to take the cuts out of the deficit year and year and year and year, because the financial status of this country isn't very good. Everybody agrees to that. We got to stop spending money on stupid things. But I do think politically that's a very good answer.
All right, let's go to the next one here. So we'll do this one quickly, but education. There are some aspects of this bill that touch on education. Lisa Hernandez is claiming that 155,000 students in Illinois could have their Pell Grants cut or eliminated entirely. That's what she's claiming. You've got some of the media reporting on this is talking about how this is an assault on children and families, that schools are going to be on the front line. You've got Pritzker coming out and saying that these are massive cuts to our schools and to families with school-age children. So let's talk about it. First, on Pell Grants. 155,000 students, that's who they're saying are going to lose their Pell Grants in Illinois. Only 250,000 students even get Pell Grants. You're telling me that 60% of them are going to lose their Pell Grants? I mean, that's how much that Democrats are exaggerating these massive numbers when they say, a billion people just died because the bill just passed. That was one of the Babylon Bee headlines. But that's what they're doing at this point. It's ridiculous. Here's the reality about Pell Grants. It actually expanded Pell Grants. It's just a straight up lie that Democrats are telling. This bill expanded Pell Grants and allowed them to be spent. They're called workforce Pell Grants, so that students could spend them in short-term, non-degree workforce programs like apprenticeships, like our trades, like career and technical education. We all agree giving kids opportunities in the trades is a great thing, and that's what this bill does. It expands Pell Grants, and yet they're saying it's going to cut them. What it does is it makes sure that those Pell Grants are only going to those people who actually need it. Senator Chesney talked about this, that people on a lot of these programs, there are people who are upper income who shouldn't be on it. And this bill, when it comes to Pell Grants, makes sure that doesn't happen. It makes sure that students that are already getting high financial aid aren't using Pell Grants as well, and make sure that those who are getting other grants don't also then get access to Pell Grants. And it expands the definition of income to make sure people aren't hiding their income when they apply for Pell Grants. Again, the whole idea is to make sure that those lower income families who need Pell Grants so that their kids can go to college or get a job in the trades, that they can get the Pell Grants they need. That's what's actually happening in this bill, despite the lies by Lisa Hernandez and Pritzker and the Democrats and the media. There's also the new private school tax credit that's going to people that give money to groups that fund private school tuition vouchers for the first $1,700. But there was a provision put in by the Senate that lets states opt out. So you can imagine states like Illinois probably going to opt out. And yet, of course, Pritzker, the Democrats are screaming about this, saying it's vouchers, it's going to kill our public schools, when the reality is this does not in any way reduce funding to public schools. So again, they're lying about it. It's a quick one, but education. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think it's a great topic. Universal and educational school choice is, they had a skinny down version at the state level through the Invest in Kids. I thought Senate Republican caucus held together very, very strongly on that. We need to be united in encouraging Governor Pritzker to adopt that program and implement it in the state of Illinois. And I don't expect him to, because he's got political ambitions that go far beyond the state. However, this is a layup issue for us. This is an issue that we can make inroads in communities that we've historically not performed very well politically in. And so, it comes down to marketing and staying united on that. But I will say the Senate Republican caucus did do a good job on that. Even if we had members that were a little uncertain, they did. We were 100% on that, which was a good deal.
Nice. Great to hear.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the ones where Democrats are coming after us on. Let's talk healthcare. This is a big one. Obviously, Pritzker, some of his claims that this bill strips healthcare from 330,000 Illinoisans, that premiums are going to rise by 75% for working families. 11% of Medicaid enrollees are going to lose their coverage, according to Pritzker. Out-of-pocket expenses are going to skyrocket over $1,000 for poor people. I said premiums are going to go up. He's claiming between $1,000 and $2,000 for working families at the lower income level. That 3.4 million Illinoisans, their coverage is at risk in Medicaid, and they could lose coverage. Again, using that word could, which is, their key word there, because that's not going to happen. And of course, screaming about the what they claim to be exorbitant, horrible things that force people to prove that they're actually eligible for Medicaid and for welfare. That's going to massive amounts of red tape, they claim, that, this is doing harm to families and it's overly burdensome, which we're going to talk about. That these are the largest cuts to Medicaid in our nation's history. 17 million Americans are going to lose their health plans. Lisa Hernandez takes it even further. She says that 536,000 Illinoisans are going to lose their health insurance because of this. I could go on, but you get the point. They're using these massive, massive numbers to scare people. I'm going to do this simply. Here's what's actually in the bill. On Medicaid, when you hear the media or the Democrats say people are getting kicked off of Medicaid, that's 100% a lie. Here's the reality. The only change that's been made is that work requirements are being put in place, that able-bodied adults under the age of 65 and with no children under the age of 15 will be required to work, volunteer, or go to school 20 hours a week in order to get Medicaid. This doesn't start for possibly 3 years. People who are exempt from this, disabled people, pregnant women, seniors, people with kids under the age of 15, people in prison or rehabilitation centers, they're all exempt. And those burdensome requirements that you keep hearing about, it's once every 6 months. That's it. Once every 6 months, you just have to say, hey, listen, yes, I am still eligible for this program. Please keep giving me my free healthcare. That's it. That's all we're asking for. You hear all these burdensome requirements once every 6 months. That's all they're asking for. By the way, here's the thing that really drives me crazy. You hear over and over the Democrats and media say 40 to 45% of U.S. births are paid by Medicaid, and that's all at risk. But you heard me say that parents of kids under the age of 15 and pregnant women are all exempt. So that means those 40% of U.S. births to 45 are all still covered. It's an absolute lie. They're trying to scare people. They're still going to be covered by Medicaid. You've got to point that out, because that is a scary thing. If you tell my wife that 40 to 45% of parents who are giving birth are going to lose their health coverage, she's going to lose it, because that sounds really dang scary. And it's 100% a lie. What else are they asking for? They're asking for individuals with incomes above the poverty line to pay out-of-pocket copays up to $35 per service. That's up to $35. That's what they're asking for. This doesn't apply to primary care, mental health care, substance abuse services, prescription drugs. Doesn't apply to any of that. Just other services. It also closes a loophole that Illinois has been taking advantage of since 2019 to tax healthcare providers. It closes that loophole. It makes sure for Obamacare that Anybody who's not a U.S. citizen or resident is no longer going to be eligible for Obamacare, and they want verification to occur before people can receive subsidies, because people were getting subsidies for 90 days before they actually were verified to be eligible for those subsidies. And oh, by the way, it ends automatic enrollment. So you actually have to prove your eligibility every year, which makes sense. You shouldn't just keep getting free healthcare or overly subsidized healthcare. You should make sure you are still eligible, because here's the point. We want those funds to go to the truly needy, the people who actually need it. That's what's actually in the bill when it comes to healthcare. None of that are you hearing from, of course, Democrats, but none of that are you hearing from the media. It's a scare tactic from start to finish, and we've got to push back on that.
Well, it's pretty funny if you hear J.B. Pritzker, Governor Pritzker, say that his concern is the financial burden on these people. This guy has been raising taxes every single year, and a lot of hidden taxes. And so you're not going to look at your income tax and say, "Oh, this is different." But he'll do things like sports betting, or like here and there, all kinds of things that are hidden taxes that at the end of the year, a lot of people have less money in their pockets, and they're not quite sure why, even though their income tax bill might be the same. He's the king of taking money from people, particularly poor people in our state and working class people that need as much money as they can to pay their bills and to pay for healthcare. This guy spent $1.6 billion to pay for healthcare for non-citizens. And you might ask yourselves, why would he pay for free healthcare for these people? And the answer is because he wants them to vote. His administration at the same time has been mailing out in the packets that people request for benefits voter registration forms pre-filled out to their county clerks. At the same time, he signed a bill that makes it so that you can't distinguish between a citizen's driver's license and a non-citizen's driver's license. So why is he giving these people this free money? And why is he doing this? Because he wants them to vote. It's disgusting what's happening right now. And anytime you hear him talk about how concerned he is about financial burdens that people face, I have a good laugh, because that man has no idea what the average person in our state or in our country faces on a daily basis. He's shown that he doesn't care. Even when he sees the numbers every year of more people leaving our state, we lost a congressional district, he ignores it and laughs it off. It's just disturbing, just the lack of empathy he has for the average person in our state who has to pay their bills on a daily basis. But, he's lived in a world that I'll never know. I didn't inherit billions of dollars from a family member. From a family business. And, I've got to pay my bills like everybody else. But the fact that he acts like all of a sudden he's concerned about the financial burden of people is a joke. And it's really comedic if it wasn't so sad that he's acting like he's so concerned about the taxpayers, because he's not concerned about the taxpayers. He's concerned with votes and votes only. And right now his votes are all at the national level. So that's why he's talking about Trump, because he wants to run for president.
Yeah.
But that's it. He only has empathy for himself if he feels like he's going to lose voters. Outside of that, he does not seem to have empathy for anybody else.
Yeah, that's true. Listen, so some of the things Republicans should be pointing out. First, Rep. LaHood said it in that interview. He said, listen, our social safety net is supposed to be a trampoline, not a hammock. In Illinois, a quarter of our population, 3.4 million people, are on Medicaid. That was never the intent of the program. It was to make sure that those who needed the help, those at the lowest income levels, could have the help that they need. You should also point out that work requirements are not a new thing. Bill Clinton imposed them back in 1996, and his was 30 hours, not 20 hours. And oh, by the way, J.B. Pritzker in Illinois, they impose work requirements when it comes to getting unemployment benefits. They make you prove every 2 weeks that you are still eligible, rather than every 6 months that we're talking about for Medicaid. So even Pritzker's talking out of both sides of his mouth when it comes to work requirements. Another thing to point out, that these are classic DC cuts. Annual federal Medicaid spending is still going to rise by 25%. We're not cutting Medicaid spending. We are slowing the growth of Medicaid spending. Another thing to point out is that 62% of able-bodied adults on Medicaid don't work at all. They're not earning income whatsoever. The idea here is we're trying to move able-bodied adults, ones who could work. We're trying to move them from welfare to work. That's what we're trying to do. Another thing is we're trying to tackle waste and fraud. More than $1 in $5 spent on Medicaid is improper. That's over $1 trillion over this budget window. Over 80% of those are due to eligibility errors. We're trying to root out that waste and fraud. And you just saw it in the last week. Cranes reported that there were 5 Illinois cases in a massive DOJ healthcare fraud takedown, where they were looking at, they're giving out criminal indictments for healthcare fraud, which came out to $14.6 billion in losses because of this fraud. And there were 5 cases in Illinois. This is happening, and that's part of what the bill is trying to root out. And so these are the things you need to be pointing to when you're talking about the healthcare aspects of this bill.
Look at Governor Pritzker's record when it comes to finding fraud in our healthcare issues right now. Look at the immigrant healthcare program, where all kinds of people, including actual citizens who were not supposed to be a part of the program, were receiving totally free healthcare because the Pritzker administration was so bad at trying to figure out who was or was not eligible for the program. And you can go through a whole host of these issues within our state. And so I think, Collin, it would be great for, I guess, Republican leaders, including myself across the state, to point out, like, look at what President Trump is trying to do to weed out fraud at the federal level. Contrast that with Governor Pritzker, who invites fraud at the state level. And it's not just been with healthcare, it's been with unemployment issues. I mean, look at who they were giving incredible amounts of money to fraudsters. And every time Governor Pritzker points the blame to somebody else. And now he wants to crack down on President Trump for.
I mean, Steve, the first place he should crack down is all the members of his administration who were caught defrauding the government on PPP. I mean, it's yes. What, there's several hundred in his own administration. The crackdown there, if you want to talk about fraud.
No question. Governor Pritzker has been the worst governor maybe in the history of our country when it comes to cracking down on fraud. He has allowed more money from our taxes to go to fraudsters and criminals than probably all of the other governors before him in our state combined.
Yeah. All right. The other area where we're vulnerable, I remember I mentioned it, is in the rural impact. When you look at polling, this is the top 1 or 2 areas that move voters. So you've got to have a message on the rural impact. Here's the opposition side, how they're exaggerating how horrible this bill is. They're saying that rural hospitals are going to close. Pritzker's saying 9 rural hospitals in Illinois are going to close because of this. And even he's saying over 90 nursing homes could face closure. That's where they're really scaring people, and it works. I've tested it dozens of times. That message works. And so you've got to be ready for that. The DCCC knows it. They're already targeting 35 House Republicans specifically on this aspect of the big, beautiful bill. So they know that this is where we're potentially the most vulnerable. And so you've got to be ready to speak to this. And here's what you got to say. In addition to how important healthcare is in rural communities, point to the fact that this bill passed a 5-year, $50 billion rural health relief fund to make sure that we continue providing health coverage and that none of these hospitals will close. Estimates say that over the next 10 years, they could lose $70 billion. So this bill has provided $50 billion over the next 5 to make sure that they don't close. Notice the media never says that. Pritzker never admits that fund was created, that those grants will be available. You've got to make sure you make that point, because on the rural impact of this bill, Republicans absolutely are vulnerable. So make sure you're pointing that out. All right, let's move to the next one here. This is another big one. We're almost done. SNAP, food assistance. So Democrats are all over the board on this, on how many people will lose their food assistance. Nikki Budzinski says more than 3 million individuals will lose their assistance. Lisa Hernandez and the Democrats are saying 205,000 Illinoisans are going to lose their food assistance, forcing working families and children to go hungry. A lot of what you've seen in the coverage of this bill talks about how that this bill and Republicans and Trump have kicked working families, low-income families off of getting their food assistance, but that is absolutely not a lie. It's so much of a lie, by the way, that even Cat Fax has, in his own way, called it out. That is absolutely not true. Here's the reality of what's happening. Because so many states, like Steve said, in Illinois, because we don't pay for that. 100% of SNAP is paid by the federal government of those benefits. And so states like Illinois are putting as many people as possible, even those who aren't supposed to be getting those payments. We're putting them on, and we're just saying, who cares? We don't pay it. Let's just get them their money. And so what this bill does is it makes states responsible if they have high error rates. And that's the big if. If your SNAP error rate is over a certain percentage, then the state has to pick that up. They're saying, fine, if you want to play this game, states, that's okay, but you've got to pay a portion of that, 5% to 15% of that. We're asking you to pay a piece of it if you're not going to clean up your act. Illinois has an 11% error rate. Of all the money we're putting out for SNAP, 11% of it is inappropriate spending, is inaccurate or incorrect spending. That's how high our error rate. And so this bill does not cut anybody off of SNAP. It simply says that if you're a high error rate state, and in the next, I think it's 3 years or so, you don't get your act together, then you're going to have to pay a portion of that, 5 to 15 to maybe as high as 25% if you don't get your act together. That's what's actually happening. So when Pritzker says that SNAP, low-income households are going to lose their SNAP coverage, what he's actually saying is I'm not capable of getting my administration's act together and fixing this problem. So when the federal government comes and asks us to pay a part of it, we're just not going to do it. And then you're going to lose your SNAP coverage. That's what Pritzker is admitting when he says that you're going to lose your SNAP benefits if you're a low-income household in this state. And again, even Kat Fax and Rich Miller have called him out for that. That's how egregious that lie is when it comes to the voters. You're not losing your SNAP unless Pritzker doesn't get his act together. So anybody have thoughts on this, on the SNAP, on the food assistance? We all agree. And the whole point of this bill is to make sure that those who need to receive SNAP get those SNAP benefits. Low-income households, food security is a big deal. We all agree. And so the whole point here is to the states like Illinois who have high error rates, get your act together. Stop wasting money on people who don't need this help so we can make sure the funding is there for those who do need the help. All right, last one here. Andrew, I know both you and Steve have talked about immigration. This bill has immigration aspects. So obviously Democrats don't like that. But here's the thing I think we need to point to. There's been very little from Pritzker and the Democrats on immigration. And there was an article by the Washington Post which explains it because it says lawmakers on the Democratic side have been more muted about the potential harms of immigration provisions, a sign that the party continues to struggle to find a coherent message on the issue after Trump's resounding election victory last fall. So another solid ground space for us is here on the immigration space. So this is going to help with border enforcement. It's going to help to make sure that we solve the immigration problem in this country. And there are provisions, obviously, in the bill there to make sure we build the wall, to fund ICE, to fund customs and the border security. And even media has admitted that Democrats ain't talking about this because the polling is on the Republican side on this issue.
One of the biggest issues there is right now, and I think that it's incredible that Governor Pritzker is just so far to the left. And like you said, Collin, he is now even aware that he needs to maybe stop talking about it in the way he's been talking about it. And, the first job that the government has is to make sure that the people within the government are safe, the citizens are safe. And when you have people that have come in this country that are committing crimes here or elsewhere and still allowed by J.B. Pritzker, for example, even after having committed and been convicted of felonies, he puts them back in the state. They're doing horrible things to people. In some cases, it's a topic that he wants to ignore, I'm sure. And it's got to be a topic that the Democratic Party wants to ignore because it's like a 90% polling issue. 90% of the people think it's absolutely ridiculous. And so I don't blame them for avoiding it, but maybe they should put the safety of the citizens ahead of their own messed up political ideas.
Yeah, fair point. All right, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, no, and I think it's also a learning opportunity for Republicans because remember, Bruce Rauner signed the Trust Act that prohibited local law enforcement from communicating with ICE, and that obviously is not aging well. I will say over the last couple of years, you've seen significant more unity amongst Republicans of sticking together on these bills that have fractured us in the past. But as Steve mentioned, these are slam dunk issues for us. So if we keep the messaging tight, we continue on in some fashion on unity when it comes to border security, cooperation with ICE. These are really slam dunk issues. Now, when it comes to rural hospitals and other topics, we're just going to have to get into our communities and kind of dispel all the rumors and calm people down. But, border security, very popular. We can win this argument anywhere. You can go to the south side of Chicago, have a similar conversation as you can in the rural areas that I represent. And it's popular to get criminals out of communities and get them moved on, regardless of where you're at, which, as you noted, that's why they're silent. But again, I'm not trying to be negative on this.
We'll stop. You were great. You said we've been unified the last few years.
All right.
Let's keep that. Let's keep
all
that.
Right, done. I'm done then.
Right, there you go. That was good. I like that. All right, so let's go to politics. We put people to sleep. We've only got a little bit of time left. Let's go back to politics here because I know that's what you guys really want to talk about. Since the last time we recorded an episode, J.B. Pritzker announced his lieutenant governor pick. And, even Democrats in his own party aren't super happy about it. He's had Harry Benton, state representative, and a few others have come out and made some comments about how this was not a great choice. I mean, Christian Mitchell is the choice, by the way. I guess I should say that, which was a surprise, I think, to many. He's not somebody who's built a lot of allies down in Springfield. He's got sharp elbows. He's ticked a lot of people off, even in his own party. This is a real interesting choice, and I don't think not one that many of us predicted. So curious what you guys think about Pritzker's choice for Light Gov when even people in his own party aren't happy about it.
Well, I would say it's like a classic example of that phrase where the old phrase, the people that know him the best like him the least. And you hear from some of these members that were served in the legislature with him in the House when he was there. They do not have good things to say. You saw the quote from Harry Benton. He quickly deleted that comment on Facebook, but thankfully, screenshots last forever, right? So that's not good. That's going to be out there, for the course of this entire cycle.
We'll put it up on screen as you're talking, Michael, so people can see it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. But yeah, I think the bad choice on Pritzker's part. I don't really know what he was thinking other than maybe, he couldn't go with Andy Menard because God forbid you pick a straight white male for anything, right? So you gotta, find somebody that fits the mold of what the Democrat Party is looking for. But I heard from some legislators over the weekend that uh, alluded to some of his behavior when he was in the legislature. I guess he was, even reprimanded by Madigan and Madigan staffers. You look at his resume, he's not been in the same place for very long. He was a state rep for a couple of years. Then he moves over to executive director of the Illinois Democratic Party. Then he moves over to, working in Pritzker's administration. He's the architect behind CEJA, apparently, which is very unpopular. This guy has a lot of baggage. And I think if you're someone who's considering running for governor as a Republican in 2026, what I would be doing is go to the ILGA website, go to the roster of who was in the legislature at the same time as this individual, and make some phone calls and see what information you can get. Because based on what I've been told, there's some things that are not going to reflect well on Pritzker's choice if that information gets out there.
Wasn't the whole thing here that he had to choose somebody who could take over as governor if he were to run and win, which everyone knows he's not going to run and win for president. But
Right.
like the whole narrative here was he had to pick someone who could take over as governor. That's why this makes it a pretty head scratching choice.
Well,
Well,
we've
that-
seen it on the national level. Look at Biden's picks for a number of offices. It's more about, hey, does this person check the right demographic boxes and not, is this person qualified and a good person for the role?
And AFP says that he pushed a retirement tax. I haven't been able to back that up, so I'm just saying what AFP has reported. But if that's true, that is absolutely going to come up on the campaign trail.
He was also, I saw a quote where he was very aggressive against school choice and said, that it was racist and all these things, which that was a very dynamic issue in this last session. Got a lot of people worked up for a good reason, on the anti-homeschooling bill that they tried to pass. So put that on a mailer.
Yeah. Steve, sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
That's okay. You hit the point that I was going to make, Collin, because when I first heard the announcement, my first thought was, well, this is proof that J.B. Pritzker knows he's not going to ever be president, because if he knew he was going to be president or thought he had a good chance of it, he would have picked somebody that could have actually been governor in a couple of years when Pritzker would have to resign or whatever if he should win. And so very, very a choice that makes known what I think we all know, that Pritzker has no chance to be president. I think he knows that. And what the most recent poll was like 2% among Democratic primary voters for president. And he's run this race before. You guys remember that he ran for Congress in like a three-way race years ago, spent like unbelievable amounts of money and got third place. That's about right.
And then he called Blago and begged for a job.
Yeah,
Yep.
begged him for a job. I mean, I think the sad thing is that, unfortunately, it's just so much politics. And that's, I think, what Christian Mitchell is known for, is just way too political. And somebody made the point, I think one of my colleagues, I think Dave Severson, was telling us that in years past, it used to be, and I would say up until the gas tax, okay? But pre-gas tax, pre-Pritzker administration, there was never a political, like if Republicans got money for a project, Democrats got money for a project, whether Republicans were in power or not. But it's been, ever since Pritzker took office, it's been ultra political. And so, like, you've seen the last budgets. What was it? The one before famously got like $300 million only for Democratic projects because no Republican voted for the budget. And we're seeing that now with these only Democrat projects again in this most recent budget. And I think Pritzker's legacy right now in our state, other than just being a bad governor and driving people out, he has taken an office and politicized it in a way that we have never seen before in our state's history, using tax dollars purely for political reasons, for retribution, for punishment. And, it's put many of us in situations where we're always trying to protect our districts, and the governor makes it very hard to protect our districts. And so, when I had to get money for New Salem, because in my district, New Salem is not being taken care of, we had to use guerrilla tactics in the media and on TikTok, et cetera. And finally, the governor relented and gave us $8 million. But the fact that a senator can't even try to get money the normal way with a globally known historic site that's falling apart is unbelievable. And the fact that this is the way the governor operates, and then the way that Christian Mitchell operates as well, by the way, is really disturbing. And so, get to all we got to have a good candidate for governor. And this is just a prime example, another prime target for that person to use to go after the Pritzker administration, who has done such a poor job with our state and who wants to double down on the failures of the last several years and make it even worse. And so this just hopefully will awaken some people up to realize we've got to get somebody, and maybe our candidate has already been announced. Maybe one of these people that's been announced it will be a great candidate. I don't know, but we've got to be united to fight this ultra partisanship that goes after really most of the state, which is what Governor Pritzker does. He just goes after everybody that doesn't vote for him. And, that's like 44% of Illinois right now, because 44% of the electorate voted for the Republican nominee for president over the Democratic nominee. So that's that's half of the state pretty much.
Yeah. And then I've got representation. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, and I think we also have to note that the Democrat Party has gotten so entrenched in identity politics that they're overlooking just ideas and qualifications and exchanging that for identity. And you're seeing that with the mayor in Chicago. You're seeing that in New York City now, where they're just trying to check certain boxes or just these wild ideas. And so there's going to be an opportunity for the Republicans to make some progress. And, perhaps this could be an opportunity, because nobody really believes he's a serious leader that could, run a state of 13 million people, right? He's checking boxes that are important in Democrat primaries. And because the Democrats have leaned so heavily into identity politics, they're no longer trying to put forward good candidates with good ideas. Now, clearly, I disagree with their ideas, but in their, ideas that were more center left, that are more palatable. They're getting extreme to where they're scaring the hell out of their own party, like Representative Benton. I mean, he even said, this guy's nuts, right? This is crazy. And so imagine what a mainstream independent's going to think, right? I mean, and so, but to go on, we have the money and the candidate and the horsepower to get that message through. Do people care about the lieutenant governor candidate? They probably don't. But I think it does say the Democrats are continuing to double down on their identity politics, which could offer an opportunity for Republicans.
Chris, I know you want to jump in. Let me just ask you respectfully if you could make this quick, because we're running low on time. So go ahead.
I'm going to slightly disagree with Senator McClure's point that Pritzker did this because he doesn't think Kristen Mitchell could be governor. My thing is, I think Pritzker did this because he doesn't want his lieutenant governor being that important. Like, if he picks a lieutenant governor nominee who's like interesting, or like, wow, like that person could have a future in
like
Democratic
Jan Gordon
Party.
Booth, Andy Minar, like some of the other names that were on the list.
Yeah, like if they're too important, then it takes the attention off of him. Pritzker needs somebody who, like, he is. I mean, listen, like we can make fat jokes here, but like Pritzker needs somebody he completely like overwhelms, overshadows. He needs a lackey. That's who Christian Mitchell is. He's a lackey. He was the state executive director for the party for a reason. The only people who get those roles are the Democratic Party I'm talking about. In the Democratic Party, you get state party positions because you're a lackey. Okay, so that's who Christian Mitchell is. He's probably there just to kind of hang around the campaign staff and make sure the mail gets sent. That's who this guy is. I'm not looking too deep into it in that regard. Like he's there because okay, person of color, younger, okay, used to be elected position. Okay, sounds good. This guy's boring as hell. Republicans aren't going to say nothing about him, and he's no threat to me in office. So that's what it is. That's what I think it is.
Hey, Collin, I got to jump in because I got to scoot to an event. But this is going to be the second time I've been a guest that I agree with Chris. So I'm going to end on a high note and just thank you all for including me as a guest to the smoke-filled room. But I think Chris is spot on actually on that. That's a good angle. Just get some aloof person in there, some lackey. Great perspective on that. But I got to buzz, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
All right, and respecting your time, thank you, Andrew. We'll text you later. And Steve, I know you're as a sitting senator, you've got a lot of things to do. So we're going to finish this up. We'll do so quickly, but if we've got to lose you, just let us know. But I know all of us have thoughts on this next topic. So let's jump on it. We'll do it quickly, but let's jump on it. J.B. Pritzker in his announcement speech was all looking backward. The first time he ran, he had a big plan, what he was going to do. The second time he ran, even still had things he was going to do. Even his own allies. I mentioned Capital Facts. Again, they called Pritzker out. I got to give him kudos. I'll give Rich Miller kudos. They called him out for this, that he announced with no plan. It was all just to protect what they had done before. There's no plan for what he's going to do in 2026. And even Greg Hines and Cranes and even Capital Facts are starting to call him out on the economy in Illinois. I mean, we are seeing significant economic challenges in this state. When even Cranes is calling you out and Hines, when even Cap Facts is calling you out for how bad our economy has lagged in this state, you've got a problem because they're natural allies of yours, and he's being hounded by these economic failures as he's trying to run for president, trying to run again for governor of Illinois. Let me just give a couple quick ones here. We'll bring some graphs up on screen for those of you who are watching this after we release it. The Chicago Tribune had some great graphs that show Pritzker's record on the economy. If you look at change in GDP, Illinois is last. You look at changes in wages, we're second to last. Look at change in population. We're last. Look at our unemployment rate. It's significantly worse than all of our neighbors. Look at our change in jobs. It's the second worst. I mean, over and over, you look at these metrics. This is under J.B. Pritzker's tenure, and our economy has significantly lagged. This is going to dog him in his run for re-elect, but it's especially going to dog him as he tries to run for president, which, as Steve said, he's not really lighting the world on fire there. There was just a poll done of 12 different candidates for governor or for president on the Democratic side. Pritzker got 2%. He was 10th out of the 12 candidates. New Hampshire ran a story about who are the serious candidates, and they even digged him. They said that he was a candidate who barely registered in national polling and lacks the ability to grab the political spotlight. I mean, these are people who are calling Pritzker out on his lack of national credentials, and his economic failures are going to dog him.
Well, I just pulled up his campaign website now, and you go to the menu. There's not a single page about issues or what he's doing. He only has accomplishments, and it's all backward looking. So it's like, okay, if we elect Pritzker to a third term, what's the plan here? What are you going to do for the state of Illinois? I mean, it seems like his entire campaign is about how much he hates Donald Trump and wants to get in his way.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers in Illinois are bad. I mean, just look at just in the last few weeks since we last recorded, our unemployment rate was reported in Illinois, and it's the 7th highest in the U.S. We've talked about the job cuts, even Rivian, which is obviously Pritzker's sort of pet project. They're cutting 100 manufacturing jobs. Pritzker just did a big press release and a big thing today, Thursday, for this company that he's bringing into Illinois. You've got to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you see it's going to create 50 jobs. While we're losing hundreds, if not, well, we've actually reported thousands of jobs. He's, promoting the fact that we're creating 50 jobs with this big, the splashy press conference and ribbon cutting like he likes to do. I mean, this is the problem. You can't govern by press release. You can't govern by press conference. And you can have all these splashy press conferences for 100 jobs here, 100 jobs there. We're losing thousands of jobs. This is a problem. The business climate in this state is abysmal under J.B. Pritzker.
I do think it's important for us as a party to respond appropriately when Pritzker makes certain claims. He's very good at, like, let's say there's a national trend, and it doesn't matter what the category is. That's, let's just say it's going 30% in the right direction nationally, but Pritzker will come out and say, oh, this is going 10% in the right direction in the state of Illinois.
Yep.
It's like, well, wait a second.
Yep.
And Wirepoint is very good at this, by the way.
Yep.
Other conservative leaning news groups are as well. Like, yeah, it's going in the right direction, but the whole country is. We're way behind our neighbors and things like that. But that's one of the things that the media lets Governor Pritzker get away with constantly, is making these claims. Well, we're going. It's like, well, wait a second, Governor Pritzker. Let's compare you to Indiana or Iowa or any other number of states. And
Steve, the one that drives me crazy, that you're 100% right, is the credit rating upgrades. He talks about, I think it's the 9 credit rating upgrades. And yet, because of COVID money, every state was getting credit rating upgrades. And in fact, we're still tied for last. So exactly to your point, he continues to tout the credit rating upgrades, and we've done worse than the rest of the country, but the media just takes that. Oh, 9 credit rating upgrades. Pritzker's great. Illinois is great. It's like, no, look at the context.
Right. And the crime numbers are the one that really trigger me. Because the Trump administration has been prosecuting all kinds of cases. And so the numbers are going down nationwide. And now you get people like in the state of Illinois that have come up with the stupidest ideas that are in place that are making crime worse. And they're saying, oh, it's going down. It's going down because of national events where the feds are coming in statewide and they're prosecuting people again. And because, quite frankly, the Democrats decided they had enough of the Kim Foxx people in Cook County, and they got a real prosecutor back in the office, despite the fact that Governor Pritzker and all of his buddies were backing Kim Foxx and saying what a great job she was doing. So, I mean, it's really tricky to try to fight back on some of these issues because the media is just so bad at really holding these people accountable. But we have to do it as a party.
Well, and what triggers me, and then I'll get Michael and Chris's thoughts, but what triggers me is just this last week, Pritzker touted the fact that Illinois ended the fiscal year with a record high, $54 billion in revenue, and that was based on our responsible fiscal management. And he was touting that, like, that was the good news, that we've collected a record amount of money from Illinoisans. That's the good news. Like, it just proves how your perspective is wrong, Governor, that when you tout your big success as the amount of money you have taken out of the pockets of Illinoisans and working families, that's what you point to as your success. I mean, AFP Illinois, kudos to them. They called them out. They said, yeah, it's thanks to higher taxes, 54 different tax and fee hikes under JB Pritzker. That's why we're collecting a record amount in revenue. You've got the wrong perspective, big guy.
So you're telling me that we took in a record amount of revenue last year, but that wasn't enough, so they had to increase taxes even more, and then those tax increases weren't even enough to fund the budget that they passed, so they're borrowing money from next year.
No.
Like, what a joke. Can you imagine if we all ran our households that way? I mean, we'd be out on our ass.
I was having a conversation with a family friend the other day, and he knows I work in politics, so he asked me how things are going. He's like, that governor of yours, he's doing a really good job. He's really turned the state around. I think he deserves another 4 years. And I said, don't you live in Indiana? He's like, well, I wouldn't want to live in Illinois for any reason, but I think Pritzker, he's doing a great job. And I think that accurately surmises, how things are going in the state of Illinois, because even the people who think Pritzker is doing a great job, they don't want to live in this damn state. So I think I agree with Steve on his points, is that I do think that the Republican Party, in a concerted effort, needs to call out the problems in the state of Illinois. Now, I understand, and I've said before, that over negative campaigning is not good, because if you just go at the people of the state of Illinois and you tell them your state actually sucks, okay, nobody wants to live here. And I think
that ain't gonna play. You're right.
Right. Even if people recognize that Illinois is unaffordable, that our property taxes are too high, there's too many problems in state government, the reality is that they live here for a reason. I think Illinois is the greatest state in the nation. I live here for a reason. I don't care if I was a multimillionaire and Collin Corbett actually paid me what I deserve. I wouldn't live anywhere else in the country other than the state of Illinois. And I think a lot of the hardworking people in the state of Illinois recognize that. So you can't be overly negative in your campaigning if you're the Republican Party, but you can reach out to voters where they agree with you by saying, listen, this state is getting more and more unaffordable every day. Every year, our property taxes are going up. Every year, it's more and more expensive to get a tank of gas. Every year, it's more and more
Utility
expensive
rates, yeah.
to raise to pay your electric bill, your water bill, your gas bill. Every year, it's more and more expensive to live here. Don't we deserve better than this? And I think if you message in that direction,
Yeah.
you have a lot better chance of moving the people of Illinois away from this mentality that the Democratic Party may not be ideal, but look at those cuckoo people in the Republican Party. You can start forming a narrative that things can be better in this state. Okay.
Yep.
And if you have that effort, the Republican Party can move back towards relevancy.
Chris, I think I want to point to something JB Pritzker said to ABC7 that was part of his narrative and it's part of why he's doing so well. He talks about how I suited up in the face of the carnival barkers and the doom grifters. I handed out optimism like a shot of Malort. I mean, the optimism he's brought has been positive. People have liked it and it's worked. And so where Republicans have done badly is we point out the problems in a very negative way instead of saying, hey, listen, here's the problem. You deserve better. Here's how we're going to make it better for you. We're going to make your life better. You need to do it with a positive lens versus a negative lens. And that's where we've always gone off the rails is we're overly negative all the time. And that turns people off. So it's
I
a great
agree
point,
with
Chris.
both of your points, which is the same point, I guess, about positivity. That's especially true within the party. That's especially true as we look at our fellow Republicans in office across the state. I've never seen such negativity. And, I lived in Arizona for 4 years. I was the vice chair of the Arizona College Republicans. And I was in Indiana for 3 years, and I was the president of the Valparaiso Law School Republicans. And then you come back to Illinois, and it's different. It's like the Republicans are the bad guys and stuff. And, it's like, and Andrew and I got into it a little bit on this, and Andrew and I certainly have conversations, and Andrew and I get along very well. But the thing is that, there is a certain segment of our party that just believes that they want to be the king of the Republicans and that the state's never going to turn Republican again. And that's both of those things are not good goals. We should want to be in power in our state again, number one. You should want to be in office with a powerful position, elected office, to turn our state in the right direction. Number one. And number two, this state will be Republican again, and it's trending Republican statewide. And we have races, believe it or not, that we can win. But if we go around and say these races are unwinnable and Republicans are awful, it's impossible to even recruit candidates, let alone volunteers for these campaigns. Do you want to turn the state around or not? And this is a beautiful state. We have incredible resources. We have great cities in this state. And that's the way that we should target our messaging. Let's make it as good as we can make it, as great as we can make it. And right now, our state is being failed by politicians that don't have our best interest in mind. And we've got to say, we love this state, but it can be so much better instead of everybody sucks, the state sucks, you suck, and that's kind of the messaging right now that a lot of Republicans across the state are hearing. And that's not good for our morale. And it's it's just not a true statement either. There's a lot of great Republicans. There's a lot of great people here, and we could do a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, the negativity, I don't see it in other states, so you're certainly not wrong on that, Steve. All right, let's do this fast. We're going to do the news you can use section. Again, to our audience, we give you some things every week you should be aware of. This was already brought up. Christian Mitchell's signature effort, CEJA, yet another promise that was made by CEJA and Pritzker has been a complete failure. There was an audit done that shows that the state has fallen way short on their social equity initiatives. In fact, despite all these promises that were made that grants were going to be made towards social equity initiatives, at the time of this grant, at the time of this audit, not a single grant had been awarded. We've covered this over and over, that all the promises by CEJA, the jobs promises, it was like 2-3 years before the first job was created under CEJA, yet they promised us thousands and thousands of jobs. The Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition is notorious for this. You give us this bill, it's going to give us 65,000 new jobs, and then it results in no jobs. Over and over they do this. This is yet another example of all the promises made by Pritzker and CEJA, and before that, FEJA, CEJA have gone completely the opposite direction. As working families, what they see is their utility rates going sky high, mostly thanks to FEJA and CEJA. All right, another thing to point to, the homeless population in Illinois has gone up 100, let me get it right. It's 116%, I believe. I've lost it in my notes, but over 100%. The homeless population has gone up. And yet in Pritzker's budget, there we go, 116%. And yet in Pritzker's budget, they cut funding for homelessness programs and homeless prevention. All the time you hear from Pritzker that we want to invest in those who are the most needy. And yet they find funds for, as Steve said, for pork for the Democratic legislators, but they couldn't find money for the homeless programs, and they had to cut that by God, my notes are awful this week, but we're not talking about a lot of money here. They could have found it. $14 million, they cut it. And yet they gave hundreds of millions to Democratic legislators for pork. They gave $5 million to NASCAR. We've covered this stuff, but they couldn't find $14 million for homeless prevention. This is J.B. Pritzker and the Springfield Democrats, Illinois.
I'm curious to see how much of that increase has to do with migrants. That's my only point.
We'll see. Next one here. Another thing about the budget, they allocated $500,000, $500,000 to a college, Lincoln College, which has been closed since 2022. Representative Sosnowski and a bunch of others have pointed to this and said, this is what happens when you ram through a budget late at night over the weekend and don't give us time to review it. We could catch wasteful spending and inaccurate spending like this. But Democrats don't really care about that. So they ran through the budget, and we find this out a month later that $500,000 is going to a college that's been closed for 4 or 5 years. That's got to drive you crazy, Steve.
A lot of things drive me crazy right now, but yeah, that's one of them.
All right, last thing here, some positivity. U.S. nationwide positivity, because we're not seeing this in Illinois. But what you saw in this last month was U.S. factory orders have surged over 8%, while imports declined 20%, and the U.S. added significantly more jobs than were expected, 147,000 jobs, when the projection was that our unemployment rate would actually go up, but it didn't. These are signs of positivity in the economy that you don't tend to hear from the media, but there's positivity in this economy, and the hope is, of course, that moves by like the Big Beautiful Bill and others will build on this positivity. But if the whole point of these moves out of DC are to encourage jobs in America, made in America, we are seeing some signs of that actually working. Chris, happy about that?
We're making America great again. It's the golden age.
Buy American, hire American.
Amen.
There you go. All right, we have dragged on. Thank you to everyone who stuck with us. Let's close with our OGs, Clowns of the Week. Let's have a little fun and then get the heck out of here. What do you guys got?
I was going to say for OG of the week, my cousin was elected trustee back in April in the village of Cambria, and he already made the front page of the Southern Illinoisan for work that he's doing to try to secure some grants for the village. So proud of him for that. That's the way government should be, getting stuff done and taking care of your constituents.
All right.
So OG, Marshall Brown.
All right, there you go.
I have one clown and one OG. My clown of the week is Elon Musk, once again, because he deemed it necessary to start another third party in the United States of America. After third parties have been routinely shot down by the American people as being unsuccessful, Musk is going to go at it again with his fiscally conservative, socially liberal nonsense, which once again never works. But the consulting class in DC are licking their chops right now, thinking how many PowerPoints they can show him, how many reports they can show him that says, listen, if only you spend $500 million on this party, you might be able to win one House seat. Think about what you could do, but you have to pay me to do it. And the OG of the week is Tobacco Land in Munster, Indiana. I went to go get Zins this last week because I'm addicted to nicotine. It used to be $24 for a log in the state of Illinois, now $42. State of Indiana, $30. So Tobacco Land, Munster, Indiana. This is not a paid advertisement. That would be illegal in this state. But shout out to them for reasonable prices on your tobacco products. Thank you.
There you go.
My OG of the week is my hometown race car driver, Justin Allgaier.
Nice.
I got to go to the NASCAR Chicago street race on Saturday to watch him race. Unfortunately, he was doing great, and then he got had a bit of an issue with the car,
Hmm.
And but I thought that NASCAR street race, the weather was really nice. A lot of people there, great for the economy. A lot of tourists, I think, in town for that. So that was really cool to see. So Justin Allgaier, he's from my 54th district
Nice.
in the Riverton area, and so that's the OG. And then the clown of the week is always going to be Brandon Johnson, as long as he's mayor of Chicago.
I just hope you didn't have to witness Brandon Johnson in his racing jumpsuit out on the track. I saw pictures. He's walking around.
Yeah, unfortunately, a few people got sick when they saw it.
I
So
mean, listen,
that's
I've got three Brandon Johnson clowns, so I'll pile on here. You've got an audit revealed that Chicago blew through its budget reserve in 2024, literally ending the year with $0 in their account. That's and now facing a $1.2 billion deficit next year. While we were on break, it was reported that Johnson's inner circle of lobbyists never actually registered with the state of Illinois, breaking the law as usual. Democrats just do whatever they want and don't feel like the rules apply to them. But hey, here's the one good news. Chicago came in at first for something. They're the bug bed capital of America for the fifth straight year. I learned that from our friend Midwest Millennial on Twitter. So Orkin crowned Chicago the bed bug capital of America for the fifth straight year. So good job, Chicago. You're number one in something. All right, let me give a couple more, and we'll close down here. My OG, it's not really OG, it's more in memoriam, but we lost Bobby Jenks to cancer. I was hoping he'd kick its butt. He didn't. I will give the White Sox credit for one thing here. They're going to wear 45 patches in his honor for the rest of the year. I do like that. So White Sox have done something right for once. But sad to have lost Bobby Jenks, World Series hero, and one of my favorites, Big Bad Bobby Jenks. Bring him out from the bullpen. I love that. Couple other clowns here real quick. We got to talk about the DuPage County State's Attorney. Jean Kazmarek is a special prosecutor has been appointed to investigate her bidding practices. This is yet another problem on top of many, many other problems by the Democrat county clerk in DuPage County. Even if you live somewhere else in Illinois, whoever Republicans run for county clerk in DuPage County, you should be involved and you should help them because this is absolutely somebody we need to take out. Chris, I'm surprised you didn't bring up Samantha Steele. As a clown of the week. Chicago Board of Ethics have fined her and several of her aides for breaches, a series of breaches. She gave out confidential information that she wasn't supposed to. Let a staffer attend a conference on county time. There was another staffer who was attending Cubs games and traveling on personal trips on county time. Samantha Steele is just constantly in our clowns of the week. This is a really weird story. One of Kat Abigazala's opponents in her race has been puking outside of her campaign office as a sign of protest because she thinks that her supporters are attacking her online. So she's literally called the puke attacker. She's just throwing up outside of her office. I've been in politics a long time, and I have never seen something like this. It is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. So I don't know. The whole situation gets a clown of the week.
And my last one is. You still don't think Kat's going to win? That's crazy.
What's that?
You still don't think Kat's going to win? That's crazy.
So the last thing I have is Jerry Reinsdorf, just from the NBA draft. The Chicago Bulls traded down 10 spots, not for more draft picks, but just for cash. I mean, are we just for the Bulls and for the White Sox under Jerry at this point? It's like we're not even trying to win. Like, here, take my draft pick and just give me a few bucks. I'm just sick and tired of this. I really would love to have sports teams in this town that actually try to win again. That's it. That's my last clown. All right,
just say something, Collin, real quick.
Good. Go ahead.
I like Jerry Reinsdorf as a person. He's been to the Capitol multiple times. And you can talk to him for a long time. And he is the most down-to-earth, conversational person. Now, that being said, I don't agree with a lot of these decisions that are being made, but I just want to say he's a very nice man, and
he is. I will grant you that. Yeah. And I've always loved Jerry. Honestly, he wanted to win up until it seems like maybe a decade ago. He kind of flipped a switch. I loved Jerry. I mean, he brought a World Series to my White Sox, but it just seems like the last 10 years or so, I don't know. Winning is not the top priority, which is kind of frustrating, but I do love him as a person. You're right. All right. Closing thoughts. We'll let our guest who stuck with us way past time go last. So, Chris, go ahead.
Not many people know that before we started the podcast, we used to have a weekly political call. And I believe one time we tracked it as our fastest political call was under 20 minutes. And here we are several years later, and we're almost 2 hours. So remember how great things used to be, guys? Now, thank you all for tuning in this week. If you want to run statewide, and for governor, comptroller, treasurer, give old Chris a call. You don't even have to pay me for my time just to call me. Just please, somebody give me something to get some dopamine flowing. Like, wow, someone's running. Like, please, anything, or else I'm just going to be stuck running judge races, and nobody wants that. Have a good weekend, everyone.
All right, Michael, your closing thoughts.
I was just going to echo what Chris said. It's decision time. Decision time actually was probably about 2 weeks ago, not, July 10th, because we're 26 days away
Months ago,
from,
but yeah.
yeah, we're what, 25, 26 days away from petition circulation. It's going to be here. You need a lot of signatures to run statewide. So it's time to, like my dad would always say, you got to shit or get off the pot.
Yeah, it's
So.
it's beyond time. You're right. All right, Steve, thank you so much for being with us and for sticking with us. You get the final word this week.
Well, I would just say that my next event, I'm going to go to the Abraham Lincoln Museum for an event. Every time that I'm ever asked to do anything involving President Lincoln, I always show up. And, he was the first Republican president. And what he accomplished was impossible. And I was watching something. Have you guys ever seen American Experience by PBS?
No.
They do some really good documentaries in some cases. Some I don't like, but some are good. But there's one about Reagan, another Illinois resident, and it just goes through. I've seen it multiple times. I haven't seen it for a while. I watched it again. Just all the things that were impossible. And then he ran, and he was a joke when he first ran for office, and an actor, and made fun of, and he won. And I just think that those two and can really be an inspiration for us as a party. Nothing is impossible, especially when the Democrats are making so many poor choices that affect everyone in our state right now. And so we have to be united. Reagan was a uniter. President Lincoln was a uniter, even though the country was divided. And if we're united, we can win. But if we continue to fight each other and be so negative for no reason in many cases, we're going to lose. But I'm optimistic that we're going to turn the state around. The state is trending Republican. I'm optimistic about some races, one in particular close to me. And I've got some details about that I can't share right now. But I'm optimistic that we're moving in the right direction. But we've got to work together, and we've got to support each other and not bring each other down so much as a party.
I appreciate that, Steve, and I agree. I know this episode's been long. Thank you for sticking with us. I put my dog to sleep. This thing was so long, but we are trying to help. We put out a lot of helpful information. Please take advantage of that. We're trying to help equip Republicans and conservatives throughout this state so we can get out there and win. My closing message is just please. It's beyond a joke at this point. Like, I thought I was going to have some fun, give a rant on this episode. It's not fun. I'm getting disheartened. Get off your butts. Let's go. If we're going to fix this state, we need to announce. Let's get on the ballot. Let's get out there. Let's get in the fight. The man in the arena comes to mind. You can't change things if you don't get out there in the arena, get some dirt under your fingernails, some blood on you. Like, let's get out there and actually fight for this state. If you believe in it, then let's go fight for it. That's what I ask you to do. With that, we'll close down. Thank you to Lane Davis, our producers. We'll be back next week with a pretty special episode, so you'll learn more about it in the coming days. But we got a really cool episode next week, so don't miss it. In the meantime, we'll catch you in the future in the smoke-filled room.